This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Kanwal L. Kanwal is a medical anthropologist and she specialized in women's health. And Kanwal's goal is to build a more effective, efficient, and equitable system of care for women across the world. I learned about Kanwal through her book. She co-authored a book called Taking Care of You, The Empowered Woman's Guide to Better Health, which she wrote together with Dr. Mary O'Connell. And what's interesting is it includes advice by 111 leading physicians and experts across the USA. Kanwal, hello and welcome.
Thank you so much, Anna, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very, very excited to learn about the book and about everything, about what a medical anthropologist does. And also, how did you get the idea of writing a book about women's health and what makes it special?
So I guess I can maybe start my story with, why I became a medical anthropologist, how I even learned what in the world that means. So I think for me, I went to college, and we'll talk maybe later about my experiences that led me to these questions, but I was really interested in health equity, who has access to healthcare services, resources, all of that. And so, I originally went into university thinking that I was going to become a scientist or maybe a physician. And I had a lot of questions around health equity, though. And so one of my professors handed me this book called Mountains Beyond Mountains. And it was about this infectious disease physician and medical anthropologist called Paul Farmer. And in that book, I remember I read this line, and the line was, "The idea that some lives matter less is the root of all that is wrong with the world." Mm-hmm. And when I read that line, I was like, this is what I think. This is what I have been focusing on. This is what I've been trying to articulate. But I didn't have those words, and I finally had those words. And so when I read that and I finished the book, I decided at that point, I was like, I'm going to become a medical anthropologist. Really had no idea what that meant, really didn't even know what is anthropology, and started just telling everybody I'm going to become a medical anthropologist. There was no one I knew in that field. There was no medical anthropology program at my university, but I started doing research, into what is anthropology, right? Learning that anthropology is the study, of human societies and cultures and how they develop. And then further, medical anthropology is really a subdiscipline within that focuses on health cultures or cultures of health. And so that can mean a lot of different things, but my focus has really been on the culture of women's health and women's health across the lifespan. How do we understand what is women's health? How is it defined? What do I think it should be defined as? How does this influence how we treat women? And, all of that led me to these broader questions. And so that also led me to some frustrations of how healthcare treats women, what research has been done in women's health, and then learning really, how far behind we are. And so eventually one thing led to another, and getting frustrated with the healthcare system, but not being able to snap my fingers and change it. I was like, what could I do right now that could make the world a better place for women? What could help them get better health and healthcare? And so that's why Mary and we co-wrote the Taking Care of You, The Empowered Women's Guide to Better Health. And this is a book that we want to have in the hands of every single woman. 95% of our proceeds go back to women's health research and education at Mayo Clinic. And really, it's our way of investing in women today and for the future. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess, in a short way, how I got to the book.
Kanwal, reading about your book, I'm learning that different diseases show themselves differently with women as with men, mm-hmm. and that we should be treated differently. Can you give me some examples and talk about that? Because we don't know about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, right? That was one of the things that was really surprising, because a lot of times when we talk about women's health, we tend to talk about women's health in, very narrow terms. Like when we talk about women's health, we talk about things related to pregnancy or menopause, and that's usually about it. That is, of course, a very vital part of women's health and, well-being, but there's also so much more that goes into that. And there's so much more, right? Like it's like before pregnancy or after pregnancy, or for those that don't want to get pregnant or can't get pregnant. And there's just so many other things that impact women's health. My focus kind of has started with like looking at the US, what is killing women in the United States today? And those things were like heart disease, diabetes, stroke, dementia, lung cancer. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I've never heard about these things. These things have never been really talked about when we talk about health in a women's space. And so it was really surprising for me to find out this information. And then I was like, well, I work in healthcare, I study this, and I feel very clueless right now. And so that was my goal, to really kind of broaden our understanding. So for example, heart disease, right? And heart attacks. Women don't experience heart attacks in the same way as men do. Like our symptoms are sometimes milder, and a lot of times, or we treat them as milder because, we don't feel that like elephant on our chest sort of thing. We may feel some kind of tingling, we may feel some kind of pain, but we'll ignore it. And in that way, a lot of times heart attacks will go undiagnosed in women. And so that heart disease isn't caught, it isn't treated, because we just don't have the understanding or the information around it. And so really that was my goal around all of these types of conditions that are really impacting women's health, helping women understand that, helping them understand, really what is this condition? How is it treated? Can it be prevented? Why does it matter to me as a woman, right? Like what makes it different in men and women? What is the research that has been done on this, or has there not been research? Because that's another thing I found, that research has really been limited. 80% of medications that get taken off the market, it's because they have adverse side effects in women. And when I mean adverse, I mean like they're probably killing women.
I never knew about this. So we have different reactions to same medication than men do.
Absolutely. Even vaccines, right? We might not need the same amount of dosage as a man, right? Like the dosing is going to be different. But all of this research usually isn't done because it's expensive to do research with women. And, it's like there's pregnancy, there's hormones, it's harder to do research. And so sometimes it's kind of been like, we'll just use men and it's okay. Women will be okay. We do the same thing, but really it is not okay. And so that's really what I want to start changing. I really want to change that culture of what we think about when we think of women's health, how we treat women's health, and the research that's being done.
Kanwal, what can we as women do? Having learned this from you now, next time I go to a physician or they prescribe me some medication or I'm doing tests, is there anything we as women can, be careful about or have in mind?
Absolutely. So this book is kind of like, it's really like my love letter to every woman. It is like the tool that I want every woman to have, because that's kind of how I templated this. Mary and I thought a lot about how could we make this like the most, not to think of it as a book that you have to read cover to cover, but really it's a tool, right? And so these things that you're saying, when you go to the physician, what can I do? So for example, like, let's say you go to the physician and you want to talk about diabetes, like you have diabetes, you want to talk about that. So in that chapter, we really, we talk about what is diabetes, how is it treated, all of that. But then we also include questions to ask your physician or your healthcare team. And we have pearls of wisdom from an expert. And so like you were stating, we work with 111 women physicians and health experts from all across the country. It's a tool in the form of a book. And so like what women can do every day is like start this conversation, have this conversation with your friends, with your family members, with other women in your life. I think that's how we're going to change things. I think things change when women get angry, but for women to get angry, they have to know, right?
Yeah, they have to know that something's wrong and what's wrong.
Exactly. And I didn't know that. I was just struggling like with my own health issues, seeing my mom struggle with her health issues and really hitting my head against a wall. And then as I started doing my own research into this, like just realizing how behind the world really is when it comes to women's health. We end the book with a chapter called you can be a health promoter, and really like, what is a health promoter? And anyone and everyone can be a health promoter, right? Like that's starting these conversations around health, how to get better health, the things that we can do every day. And,
but I'm so excited to ask you now. And I know it's probably a tricky question because it's probably super complex, but do you have a simple advice? Like what are the most important thing we as women should be doing for our health?
The most important thing I would say to each and every woman is that overwhelmingly we take care of other people and we don't take care of ourselves, right? We feed our families, we make sure they get to things on time. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like women are the magicians of the world. They make everything happen and come to life. But in this process, they don't take care of themselves, right? And I think it's like every day, take that time to take care of yourself. Eat things that are good for you. Make that time to exercise. You can take 30 minutes for yourself every day, 10, 15 minutes at least, go for a walk. You can do these small things that you can incorporate. But a lot of times as women will say, we don't have time, we don't have time, we don't have time. You have to make the time.
You have to make time. And even if you start with small increments of time, even if it's 10 minutes in the beginning of just dedicating to yourself and your health, it already helps. And then they're going to grow to 15 and to 20.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. For me, at least one of the things I would struggle with a lot is like, okay, now I have to start eating right. I have to start exercising. I have to do all of these things. And then I feel overwhelmed and I can't do any of it, And I think it's that one thing of just starting small. And I think that's why I was kind of stressing even having this conversation, because behavior change is so hard. And I think for me, part of writing this book and having these conversations for years is like what led me to start changing some of my own, actions. Like, it's like, I can't, I laugh. I'm like, I can't, preach this message and we do this all the time, right? We're taking care of our loved ones all the time. But like, it's at the same time, you have to do it for yourself first. And it's like they tell you in the airplane, you have to put in that oxygen mask on yourself before you help anybody else with it. If you don't have that to give to yourself first, you are not going to be able to give the most to your child or to any other loved one around you. And so you have to do that first. It's not anything revolutionary. It's a very simple thing that we hear all the time, but it's so hard to do. Building this routine and starting small. And I think that's why I say it starts with conversations, because the more we talk about it, the more we're going to think about it. And then eventually one day you're going to say, okay, let me take those 10 steps outside. Let me take my 5 minutes to make myself something healthy to eat this morning. When we start having these conversations, eventually we're going to start changing our own behaviors. We're going to influence the women around us to change their behaviors. We have the power to influence things and move the trajectory of women's health. And it starts with ourselves.
Yeah. But let me ask you about your mom, Zahida. And I learned this from Pakistan. And it was interesting how you told me that her life and her experiences are partially a reason why you are working with women's health and why you wrote this book. Tell me about her. I'm interested about her life.
Yeah. So my mom immigrated to the US when she was, I think, around 17 years old. And she worked really hard, her and my father both, to provide a better life for their children. And I think in that
sorry
way,
to interrupt you. So she was already married when she moved to the US at 17?
No, she wasn't. She moved with her family when she was 17. But she went back and she met my dad. She actually had gone back for her best friend's wedding and she met my father at that wedding. So they met, fell in love, got married, and then he came back to the States. He moved with her. And so when they started out their life as a young couple, it was one really difficult as immigrants, just as young adults. And then I'm the oldest of 3 children, and I came about a year after they were married. And my mom worked really hard. So she worked all kinds of odd jobs. She worked in factories. Now I think about these types of working conditions that she was in. Like, did this impact her health? Because when I was about 10 years old, she got really sick. And she got diagnosed with mixed connective tissue disease, which is a rare autoimmune disorder. And it really, impacts your joints, basically like makes your joints frozen. So in her hands, her fingers would become immobile, her knees would become immobile. And like, as a result, she was immobile, right?
How is it different from arthritis?
It's like a combination of arthritis. It's similar. I don't know all of the mechanisms, but it's like similar to, I think, rheumatoid arthritis. There's parts of that are in mixed connective tissue disease. It's like a mixture of like lupus, arthritis, many different things that are kind of going on. And because of that, it leads to a lot of other types of complications, like, high blood pressures. It's like arthritis plus almost.
So she was young when this was diagnosed, when she started suffering from it.
Yeah, she was young. I think she was probably in her late 30s. And with that, I saw her struggling over time. We lived in rural Missouri. There wasn't a lot of access to specialists. So she needs to see a rheumatologist, and she would have to drive 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours to see specialists. And it impacted our whole family dynamic in terms of what was going on in the house. And I think that's what I saw, right? Like when my mom wasn't there, when she couldn't be there physically, the whole dynamic of the house changed. And the thing is, like, my mom always put so much focus and energy onto taking care of everybody around her. Had she paid attention to herself, maybe her symptoms could have caught earlier. Maybe it wouldn't have progressed in the way that it did. Maybe she could have started on some treatment earlier. Maybe she could have incorporated healthier things into her lifestyle. I don't know, right? But what I do know is that I saw her not taking care of herself, and I saw how this disease took over her life. And, and now I've seen also many years later how she's doing a lot better. But it kind of sucks. She waited until her children were grown before she kind of felt she had the time and energy to focus on herself. And I wish she had done that. I wish that she would have focused on herself from day one, because then maybe that experience wouldn't have happened, or it wouldn't have happened to the extent that it did.
Was it really debilitating? Like, did she have days where she couldn't do anything?
Yeah, absolutely. She couldn't move. She couldn't get out of bed, right? Your joints are immobile. So just think of yourself as like being like almost frozen.
So what helped her? If she's doing better now, thankfully, how did that happen?
Like, she's been with the same doctor now for 20 some years, right? And so she worked really closely. She had a really great healthcare team. She had my father, who was her advocate, who, drove her to her appointments, who basically made sure that she was taking her medication, who forced her to start exercising, to start eating better, right? Like, he was like, it's not going to get better unless you do these things. And really, like, he had to push my mom to really take care of her.
And he's a doctor, you told me.
He is a doctor, yes. Internal medicine. And I think that's one thing I always see the difference between my mom and my dad. My dad has always been active. He, no matter what, will make time to go, he swims, he runs, he goes on walks. And he does that. Like, he has always made time for himself. And it didn't take away like from our family life, but we would always know, okay, my dad's getting up in the morning. He's going for a swim. He's going to go like for a run before he comes home. During his lunch hour, he may walk stairs, but we always knew like that was something my dad did. And he always made time for it, whether there was like a family event going on or not. He didn't care. He always kept that time for himself. Where my mom would be like, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z for everybody else. Like I have to do this for my children. They come first and whatnot. And my dad, he's doing really well and he still has his routine. He's always been super disciplined about that. And I think, I see that in so many households, not just in my household. Why do we as women feel that we have to take care of everybody else, but we can't make the time to take care of ourselves? And so really that's why this is called taking care of you.
Yeah. Do you think that sometimes that happens because men have their professions and often they're the breadwinners and women slide into the role of caretakers and taking care of staying home with the children, taking care of the family. And then it's harder for women to take this time for themselves because they feel, in a way, guilty and already anyway that they don't have a profession or are not earning. And then it's harder to say, look, I need this 30 minutes a day or an hour.
I think that might be part of it. And now there's a lot of women who work, like whether you work inside the home or outside of the home, you're doing work. Exactly. You're doing labor.
This is what I was aiming to.
Yes.
Yeah. Like this is what we have to learn. Mm-hmm.
Like, raising children is work. Raising children, keeping a home, it's all work. And so even now, like women who might work outside of the home, they may have their careers, but we've seen, they still end up taking so many of these responsibilities at home, yes. Right? The second shift, yes. We talk a lot about that. But then there's also so much more literature that is coming out. If a woman is active, her children are going to be more active. Mm-hmm. And so if you want your children to be healthy and you want them to be active, you need to make sure that your spouse is also being active and taking care, and especially from the mother. That's what research is showing. They will emulate the mom, and if the mom is taking care of herself and she's active and she's exercising, the children are also going to be doing that. And so it's really like, if you want to invest in your children, you need to invest in your partner. Mm-hmm. Our partners need to make that a priority as well. And I think there's a lot of guilt that we feel, we're kind of socialized in this way to, no, I can't do this. I have to make dinner right now. I have to, do laundry right now, or I didn't finish this work for my meeting, so now I have to do this after work. And so we're always taking that on. And I think, I 100% struggle with that. I've started to put those boundaries in place because I've recognized, and because I've started doing it, I can feel in my body, when I haven't gotten enough sleep or haven't gotten, the right food. And I feel like I am a much better worker, both at my job and I'm a much better partner. I'm a much better friend when I have taken care of myself. I have more to give others when my cup is full.
So your dad managed to support her in eating better, taking care of herself. And you said this resulted in her feeling better now.
Absolutely. He, made sure, even if it's hurting, we're going to exercise, right? Let's go for a walk outside together. Let's make a meal together. It doesn't have to be a fancy. Mom is an amazing cook, right? And so it was, and I never realized that until I went away for college that, I'm eating a 5-course, Michelin star meal all the time. It's like you can make a quicker meal, yes. Healthy, nutritious. Yes. Yeah. You can use the other time to then go for that walk or do whatever you need to do your physical therapy exercises, whatever it may be. I see that with so many women in my lives. It's like I go over and they're amazing hosts. They're so loving. They're so caregiving, and they will, move mountains to take care of other people, but they don't give that same energy to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Mom Zahida's lessons. I'm very, very curious to learn what you have learned from her and from all these experiences.
Absolutely. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned from my mom is really that if you really believe in something, if you want to change something, you can do it. Like you have that power within you. You have everything inside of you to make your dreams come true. And I think that was one thing, we moved around a lot when I was a child. We came from very modest means. My parents worked odd jobs. One of the lessons that I've now realized that I had in that was that I never felt like I didn't have enough. I never felt like there wasn't anything I could do. And so in my home, reading was always encouraged. A trip to the library was always encouraged. I could go, I could get whatever I wanted from the library. And really, learning and being a lifelong learner was something that was really, really pushed in my home, and especially from my mother. And I think one of the things that she would always tell me, and because of her, like, I'm the first woman in my family who became college educated. I'm the first one who has a master's, and I hope one day my PhD as well. And my mom didn't have all of those opportunities. She didn't, get to have all of those resources, but she really pushed that for me. And she always taught me education is something no one can take away from you, and educate yourself. And that doesn't mean, just through degrees, but it also means through learning, through knowledge. There's so many different ways to learn from our community members, from our loved ones, from books. And I think that was probably what drove me to one day writing a book on my own. That was never something I had planned, but it was that kind of love for learning and for sharing what I've learned and bringing others up with me, right? Like the value of community, the value of taking care of each other was also just a huge, huge lesson in my home, and something that was really focused on. The only thing I want to change from that is also take care of you.
This is something you wish she had taught you.
Yes, absolutely.
Kanwal, thank you. This was really, really interesting and inspiring.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share some of my stories.
Oh, it's fantastic. I can't wait to take a look at a book. I need your book in my library.
Yes.
We'll put links to the book and to the book's website in the episode notes. Yeah. And before we say bye-byes, I'd like to recap a little bit and talk about the highlights of our conversation. For me, definitely the highlight was learning that our women's health is different and we should approach it differently than men's health, and think about medication and vaccines and different ways different diseases show themselves. That was fascinating. This is why I wanted to read the book. It was also interesting learning about your mom's life, and really the highlight that I took out of that was take care of yourself in time.
Yeah.
You are of no use to anybody if you're ill and hurt and in pain. I love it how you said how when she started taking care of herself, it helped her, and how you wish she did it earlier. I love how you said she taught you that if you want something, you have everything inside of you that you need to achieve it. That's so important. Reading, curiosity, learning how important that is, and community and taking care of each other. I think those were the highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even with this book, Mary and I, we wrote it, so we hope that it's, an investment today in women. It's helping women today, but also the proceeds go towards research and education. 95% of our proceeds go, right? And we want to bring every woman on this journey with us. And we want to change that culture, and we want to make sure moving forward that for the next generation that they have better tools and better access than we did.
Yes, and appropriate care. Thank you
Absolutely.
for doing that. You definitely planted this seed with me today. I hope with my listeners as well.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, Anna.
Thank you. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider. That's Tajder. This was Thank you, Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.